Hey guys, this week I'm going to show you how I made this wooden mason jar lid. Stick around. Hello and welcome to this week's edition of BS with AJ. As I said before, this week we're going to be making this wooden mason jar lid here. It's actually made out of ash because I have quite a bit of it and it's fairly cheap wood. It has the plastic lid on the inside and things like that. It looks pretty neat on the jars, especially if you're using it for decorative purposes. Just setting it up on a shelf and things like that, fill it up with whatever you want to, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, it's a really simple project. We're going to be using the lathe for this project, and it actually looks pretty neat. So I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and consider supporting BS with AJ on Patreon so we can do bigger and better projects for you guys. Also, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when I post new videos. And if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave those down in the comment section below. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright guys, so to start this project, I have a 1-inch thick piece of rough sawn ash here, and I went ahead and rough cut out a 3.5-inch circle. As you can see, there's my line there. I just took it over to the bandsaw and made it just slightly bigger than that. I've already got my center point here, and I used an awl to point so that way my live center here would fit in there real nice and snug. So the first thing we're going to do is we already have a glue block set up here. So we're going to take some hot glue. Make sure you got a good hot glue gun that gets real hot. You don't want to use the cheap ones that you can get at like Walmart and stuff. But now we're going to take that, put on here, tighten this tailstock up real nice. Tighten that up, make sure it don't move anywhere. And then we're going to go ahead and run a real quick bead all the way around here. So alright, so now we're going to let that dry. Alright guys, now that it's had time to dry, we're going to go ahead and turn this round and get it down to that line that I showed you just a few minutes ago, so that way it's a little bit smaller than 3.5 inches. And what we're going to do then, we're going to put like a little divot here in the middle, so that way it's easier to grab a hold of. Alright, now that we have it nice and round and we have our little divot here, so we have our basic shape right now to our lid. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and flatten out this edge right here, so that way whenever we go to drill our hole here in just a couple minutes, we don't have to come back and do a lot of detail work to this. Alright, now that we have it flattened out, we're going to go ahead and use this 2 7/8 inch Forstner bit to go ahead and mark where our hole is going to be. Now, you don't want to turn this too fast, so I'm going to turn my lathe down to about 800 RPM or lower. So we're going to go ahead and do that. And like I said, we're just going to use this to mark where our hole is at first. We are going to come back and finish it up with this hole because this makes a really nice tight fit for that lid to fit in there. But we're going to do most of the work on the lathe just by hand because it's a lot faster and it's going to save this drill bit. You'll notice I didn't go all the way to the line here on my wood. That's because I'm going to come back with my 2 7/8 inch drill bit to finish the job. It makes a really nice tight fit for our lid, and you almost don't have to use glue if you finish it off with this drill bit. Now you can do it by hand like I said, but if you go one way or the other, it's either going to be just a little bit too snug for your lid to fit in and you're going to break your piece in half, or it's going to be too loose and it's going to leave a gap and you're going to have to use more glue to hold it in there. So that's why I like to use my 2 7/8 inch drill bit here. Also, you want to make sure that you leave plenty of width here on your center because that's what's going to keep it centered in your piece. If you don't have that piece, if you're just going straight into there, it could wobble a little bit and waller out your hole, and you don't want that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and finish drilling it out with our drill bit. I have it marked on there, the depth I want to go. I'm going to go about 5/8 inch deep. I'm going to go slightly over to make sure none of the lid shows, but I mean just a fraction over, not much. Alright, now like I said before, I have my depth already set on here. I marked it on here with a little pin, and it's 5/8 of an inch deep. So we're going to be going just slightly over that to make sure that our lid doesn't show, that plastic part doesn't show. So like I said, make sure you mark that so you don't go too deep, and you don't want to go too shallow either. So make sure you put a mark on your drill bit. Another thing, you want to make sure you're holding on pretty tight to your chuck whenever you put it in there, because it will try and spin on you. One more thing, you don't want to go over 800 RPM when you're doing a drill bit this big for sure. You probably want to go a lot lower than that actually. And you want to just barely move it in. You want to go just a fraction at a time when you're doing this. You're going to overheat your bit and you're going to make it go dull a lot quicker, and you could overheat your piece and it could mess it up. And you don't want to mess it up after you got this far, of course. So we're going to go ahead and do this. I'm going to show you in real time real quick how slow you need to go. Alright, we'll get that set off there just a little. And we'll get this set to about 700 RPM or so. Alright, so that's about the speed you want to go. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up so you're not sitting here watching me drill this. Alright, now when you're looking at your lid, you'll notice that there's a couple things you have to account for. You can't just throw your lid in here and it fit perfectly. There is a little lip here on the top, and it's about 1/8 of an inch deep or so. The easiest way to make sure that you get the right depth is to use a little gauge like this. And you can set that on the bottom where your lip is and make sure it's flush with the top of your lid. And you can sit here and check that as you're cutting, because if you go too deep, whenever you go to work on the top part of your lid, you could accidentally go through and ruin your project. Another thing you have to look out for is on this edge here. You'll notice these lines here or there. Now those don't matter. They set real snug in that 2 7/8 inch hole that you just drilled. But this lip here on the top, you will have to cut out a little bit on that side. I'd say it's probably between a 1/16 and 1/8 of an inch thick, and you probably want to go about 1/8 of an inch, maybe 5/16 deep in here. And that's just kind of guesstimating on that. I don't ever get it perfect. I always go just a little bit deeper than I need to, because if that part gets caught on this, if you don't drill it deep enough and that lip gets caught there, it will snap your project in half. I've had it happen, and you don't want that. So I always go just a little bit deeper than you would think. You don't want to go all the way down though, because it won't sit in there as nice. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We'll start by working on this bead here. We'll get that knocked out, and then we'll come back and finish up this side here. And then we're going to go ahead and part this off and turn it around and work on the front part. Alright, now that we have all the inside drilled out to where our lid's going to fit real nice, we're we're going to go ahead and start sanding this down, and we're going to finish most of the surface here and this edge for sure, because when we turn it around, we're not going to be able to get to that. So we want to go ahead and finish that now. Alright, now that we have all that finished and nice on the inside here and most of this side here, we're going to go ahead and part this off. We're going to just basically just touch the edge of it here and melt all that glue, and we're going to get to where we can pry it apart, and then we're going to turn it around and reverse it and put it on our chuck, so that way we can finish off the top of it. Alright, now to work on our top, we're going to be using our 1/2" bowl gouge. And the way I like to do it is I'm going to start from the center here and kind of work my way out. And I'm going to be making a concave look to it. You don't want to go too deep, because if you do, you'll go through this and you'll ruin your piece. So you have to be pretty careful if you're going to do that. Now you can make yours flat, or you can round off the whole thing, or however you feel like doing it. This is just the way I like to do it. So like I said, I'm going to start from the middle and kind of concave this just a little bit. Then I'm going to round over my edge here, and I'll go ahead and sand and finish all of this as well. Alright, now to finish this project, we're going to go ahead and use some mineral oil to put all over this project here and let it soak in for a minute or two. And then we're going to come back over it with wood butter. And that's just a mixture of mineral oil and beeswax. I've got a link, I'll put a link down in the description below to show you how to make that and everything. I've got a specific ratio I use. And we'll go over it with those two things, and then we'll make it real nice and smooth and slick. And then we'll go ahead and glue our lid in. Alright, now that our piece is all finished up, we're going to go ahead and take some CA glue and put on the inside of here, and then we're going to put our lid in. So, we want to make sure you get quite a bit in here to make sure it's going to hold real good. Now, like I said, with using that drill bit, it will make it a nice tight fit here, so you don't have to worry as much. But I like to be sure that everything's going to work out. So you'll start it like this, and you just kind of push it in. I like to take mine over and hit it like this. Make sure it's set down there real nice. And like I said a while ago, whenever I was cutting that piece here, I made it a little deeper than I needed to, a little wider, because if that lip were to catch this edge here and you start beating on it like this, it'll snap in half. I'll show you an example here. This is one that I didn't make big enough. and when I went to put it in there, it just broke right in half. So that was a waste. So now we'll go ahead and put this on a jar, and you'll see how it looks there. But that's pretty much our final project, or product. Alright guys, well here's our final product. It's all finished up, it's got the lid glued in it. So we'll just put it on a mason jar here and show you how it looks. And you see, it looks pretty neat. Now you can make these thinner, or you can just round off these edges to make it look a little skinnier. I've done one similar to that here, right here. And it does look a little smaller, and it looks pretty good. But the thinner you make these walls, the more likely that is to come apart while you're turning it. So you do need to be careful when you're doing that. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and consider supporting BS with AJ on Patreon so we can do bigger and better projects for you guys. We'll see you next week.